Transcending collective fear. Certain ideas have found me tonight that I feel they deserve to be heard, but at the same time, what I have written in the subtitle of this episode has, I discovered something. And to me, it is very immense, very huge, its significance, because I feel I have, at least in this episode, I found an explanation for the mind and for why divinity and that concept exists, and in some sense what that relationship is of the mind, of the relationship of the mind with the divine, and the nature of attention in regards to how it is individualized and how it will collectively be seen. So, to start at the title, Transcending Collective Fear, an idea occurred to me. We have individuals, and you look at the person, the average, let's say the common man, the human being, and you see that the human being has moments in its life where there is fear and moments where courage is flowing through the person. You know, it's as if life is never just one statement we can say about it. Life is kind of like a dynamism that shifts and gives us many angles of reality. Now, if an individual can experience fear, an individual has a contrast starting point to experience joy, or anybody who has experienced any sort of suffering, that's like the geometry of that suffering, and its opposite is like that suffering is the contrast point into recognizing your bliss. Kind of like somebody doesn't like a certain type of music, and the moment the music's turned off, it's as if they experience bliss from their suffering. Now, if an individual can experience fear, the idea went forth in my mind, what if a species has a fear? The fear of the species, not in the consideration of one person's past, but in the consideration of all of our pasts, senses of past. So examples of a species transcending collective fear would be as if a species transcending death. Death is a collective fear. Darkness is a collective fear. Extinction, which is like the death of the species, that's a fear, you know. There's so many senses of things that we can get fear of, you know, perceive it as if we're afraid of it. You know, it's like the nature of the mind is that what it doesn't know, it intensely or reactively responds to. You know, it's as if so many sages have said conscious living. You know, so many yogis, they're like, yeah, you gotta live consciously, man. But that conscious living means to be also conscious of how you can be unconscious, or how there are unknown states of how the awareness is receiving everything as the moment. You know, in my understanding, if somebody says, hey, Mr.Within, how do you define consciousness? I would say consciousness is what is translating geometry, or I'll say it this way, it's what's translating sensory, it's what's, consciousness is translating light into modifiable reality. And part of those modifications include fear, include joy, include the concept of success. It's as if, what is success? You know, it's as when you think about it, it's as if it's a moment where you chooses, like you could say, success. A good definition for success would be like if you were drawing an artwork, that moment where you're like, it's enough. It's like the last brush stroke is like a sort of success. you know Now, anyways, the picture I'm trying to paint here is that an individual has fear, so a species has fear. Now, what happens when this species transcends its fear, right? And fear can start from anything. It's anything really we can't handle. So if the unknown gets introduced to our species in an intense way, we freak out. But if it's gradually introduced, then the species has more of a ability to respond to what may shock it, or astonish it. I've written a list here, a checklist of ideas I'm gonna attempt to get through in this episode. But anyways, to continue on from transcending collective fear, these are all stages in what we can fathom that will happen, really, right? It's like right now I'm an individual, in a world, so my relationship goes with like the collective, right? It's like I've experienced being an individual. The collective remains, and I'm talking about, you can classify it between the outer realms and the inner realms. So what I mean by that is that there's a sense of collectivity behind your eyes, which really has to do with how you're being. And then there's a sense of collectivity in front of your eyes, which has to do with what you do in a temporary time span. It's as if it's like the sands of the hourglass are falling, and it's as if is the individual attempting to seek out the most advanced. This was really something. I gotta give a comment on this. That really, one of the biggest things that changed my life was that upon realizing that every temporary being is authorized to wonder about the most advanced archetype or the most advanced perception. It's like the moment you start seeking the advanced, you begin to see really that what is really advanced about the human being is also echoing within all the moments that the human being has made contact with. It's as if, like, you can think of it this way: there's a type of contact where, okay, aliens land down, we shake hands, and then there's a type of contact where you open your eyes in the morning, and it's as if awareness contacts format, and based on how the person decides throughout the day, there is a momentum to how their eyes are just whirling through the space-time continuum. Once we're done with the fears of the individual, pretty much it's as if, like, where do you go beyond individual life? You start identifying with a collective life. Let's say if you're a more metaphysically inclined, that collective life to you doesn't have shape, so pretty much it'll take you, like spirituality takes you towards being the secret of energy. I'm telling you, many people don't realize this. For many people, spirituality is like theatrics. For spiritual people, I'm talking about. It's like for them, their spirituality is like let's say, a celestial narrative, an other dimension narrative, something like that, right? But ultimately, where the spirit goes is that the definition of, let's say, a soul or a spirit is that which is beyond matter. right? So when we go beyond matter, and if we're energy wondering about what's beyond matter, it's as if you see the other side of energy, which goes into the levels of being, right? So strangely, it's a way of saying that in certain dimensions, there are beings that are doing things to be, and in certain dimensions, there are beings being in order for things to be done. You can say the God archetype, God doesn't do. It's like it because it's not personalized. There is no doership attributed to it, or then it would be us humanizing God. You know, I find it very interesting that in religious scriptures, you know, primarily like Abrahamic religions, they say God is inconceivable, but then they are taking in like a humanized version of what the divine was saying, right? So it's this strange thing where it's like God is beyond man, but God is communicating to man through man. You know, it's as if there's, you can say, let's bring in parallel, universe theory, and for a second fathom that in one universe, right, there's like, in our universe we have like the prophet saying, follow these things, this is your way to connect to, let's say, the truth. And then you see in another dimension of this earth, right, instead of there being prophets, it's like the other way around. It's as if everybody has a direct communication with the, let's say, the truth of the narrative. And so what I'm saying, it's like indirect approach, direct approach. The indirect approach is the humanized interpretation of reality. The indirect approach. The direct approach is the actual experience of the living intelligence of reality. You see, I'm just some guy here. I mean, if you think about it, really, it's like I'm on a rock in the middle of nowhere in an unknown universe, and I'm this evolutionary animal that's just making noise. And these and these sounds are attributed. They're linked to certain pre-considered imagery, and then when others hear me, it's like, yay, language, you know. Starts the show. But really, language is the indirect approach. The direct approach is that regardless of what linguistic truth there exists, it's a direct experience of being. It's like when if somebody asks me, "Who are you?" the answer I give to that is completely, like, no way can it be equal to how I'm experiencing myself as a being. I think it's impossible for anyone. Nobody can explain themselves, not because they can't, because language is limited. So ultimately there's an experiential dimension to life, and then there's an ideological, conceptual, language based relationship with life. And all those people who are suffering because of the past or future, they haven't realized that the attention that is aware of a past and future actually is observing beyond the narrative. So what that means is you are using language as an identity, but you are not language. Like, it's as if when it comes to at least society and culture, sure, you have to be a persona. But in reality, nobody is just a bunch of letters. Nobody is a sound. But we treat it that way. You see what I'm saying? It's like, and believe it or not, I'll share this, a bit of ancient yogic insight. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, if my memory serves me well right now, there was a quote I read recently which was very astonishing. And I have this habit of, I open books. This may be a interesting thing to share. So what I do is, like, I have this library of books, and I open one of the books, and I don't see the pages. I just open the book randomly, put it on a table, and then I go about the day, and whenever I just feel called to go and look at that book, then I pick it up, and it's like it links to the thoughts I have when I feel I need to take a look at it. All right. So anyways, I did this with the Srimad Bhagavatam, And this is like a, you can consider it as semi-ancient semi-ancient book, you know, where it's talking about the relationship of this archer with God. And in it, there was this statement about karma. And this statement about karma was so profound because it was, I can't remember the exact wording, but I'll tell you the image the quote painted. Pretty much it was this view that, okay, if man thinks about karma, sure, there's all the stories, but it's as if God doesn't pay attention to karma. Actually, guys, let me go find the book and just, I think the book's close by. Hold on. Okay, so I found the book. I'll read for you the exact quote. So the Srimad Bhagavatam says, karma can never bind me. This is God, like, talking to an archer in this book, okay, named Arjuna. And God is saying to Arjuna, Krishna, like the avatar of God, says, karma can never bind me because I have no desire for its fruits. Those who know this truth about me are also never bound by their activities. So it's as if karma is a big deal for the individual, but from the collective perspective, it is not a big deal. That means it's as if human beings care about their karma, but it's as if does God care about our karma? Especially in, let's say, this is, of course, this book is from a polytheistic tradition, but from a monotheistic tradition, if you were to look at it, it's as if, like, when there's destiny, why should God care about karma? It's as if, like, to me, sometimes it's strange that religious people believe in destiny, but then they pray. Prayer to me has multiple meanings. That means there's moments I have prayed, but I'm saying that it's as if it's strange that there's the concept of destiny, but then the person has to do something, right? The person, prays for this, prays for that. So it's as if, again, it's like the direct approach is being ignored to some degree. You see, it's as if there's some people who they hear the concept truth, they're like, oh my God, truth, where can I get truth? Can somebody tell me where I can buy truth? Can I buy truth from Amazon, And then there's some people who are like, truth. If there is a truth, it is here now. Even if we say we're in an illusion or simulation or any sort of linguistic, semantic excuse, the illusion requires the original to be there to exist. That means the illusion is like the second level. It's like if truth was an onion, the central core of the onion is like truth. Then the layer after it is like, the games of language. So, part of transcending, anyways, moving onwards, part of transcending, at least this is my opinion as a being here, fear on an individual level is very different than fear on a collective level. And we may have this idea that individuals have to get rid of, like 8 billion human beings. When they stop fearing, then we see like the true, how the true humanity is like meant to be, right? But I would say more than that, it's like the human intelligence has a capacity to shift its attention, and by shifting its attention, like a light going through a different lens, a new archetypal position can be established, right? That means it's kind of saying like, rather than us being defined by our past, how we pay attention to the future suggests how the past recycles. How it's like, what's the term? I don't know, recirculates. Like, I see personally two components to this notion of transcending fear, collective fear. To transcend collective fear may mean that human beings become immortal. It could also mean that human beings realize they are naturally eternal. Pretty much these are the options. Either we remember natural eternity, or we transform into artificial immortality, you know. But anyways, the species, in order to transcend collective fear, needs to find a new archetype, and an archetype empowered by a collective perception, a collective value. That means it's as if a person just living for themselves and then realizing at the same time, it's as if like as you are a member of your own moment, you're also a member of your species. That means that our moments are like, we are like the hard-working cells, or the hard-working, or the thunderous neurons of like the human collective mind. It's a different association. It's like right now, if I wanted to become really like somebody like, I mean, personally, I don't have this view of like guru disciple. To me, everybody is like an explorer in an unknown world. But if there was, it's as if like the attitude could be that it's like right now I am God. Everything's God. Everything's just one. Everything's just an energetic oneness of truth, like intelligent truth. You know, and then that would be a sort of, I would say, in, individual going towards collective view. But then there could be this attitude that as long as the unknown is there, oneness is not the point. That means it's as if it's a really, I would say this is a really high level philosophical, I don't want to say issue, but it's kind of like, it's as if there is oneness, does that mean that the known and the unknown are the same? And what does it mean? What does it suggest in regards to the viewer? It's as if like, imagine like this human lifetime is like, just like your index finger compared to the whole body, which is your greater life, let's say, rooted in dimensions unfathomable, right? So it would be as if like the identification beyond the individual brings about the collective notion. The collective notion cannot have fear. Do you know? Or let me say it this way, if it has fear, it also has instantly its counter. Do you know? It's like when we realize intelligence is, or human intelligence is connected to a, let's say, deeper intelligence, that deeper intelligence removes the fear of the individual. So in some sense, it's like a recognition of collective being moves individual fear. Now let's say if we want to move remove collective fear, think of it as if three levels: individual level of intelligence, collective level of intelligence, and then after the collective is the transcendental level. So it would be as if, like, when we become transcendental beings, we completely surpass or go beyond the fear of the species. Do you know, it's very strange, this whole, it's as if existence is something that uh, is unreasonably here. Anyways, to move on to the subtitle. I've written here the secret of symmetrical dimensions. And oh yeah, this is the main, I would say, main essence of this talk. So let me bring it to this point where an individual, a human being, is wondering about how to transcend collective fear. And part of that includes understanding the world we're in, the reality we're in. Now, since my childhood till now, I have wondered about, like, what is going on here. Like, what is the world? Not just where or, how the world happens, but, it's like, what is this? Right? And the dimensions that I've fathomed for, I would say, till 2011, I'm born in 1991. It's like till 2011, or even a bit after that, it was like 2011 onwards. That was when, until that moment, I was living in a dualistic dimension. It was as if my intelligence hadn't debunked good and evil yet, And so it was all a sort of contrast, dualistic system. That means either the day was good or it was bad, But I reached a certain point where I transitioned beyond duality. Now, there's a bunch of options of what happens to the psychology when you wander beyond, like, chaos and order, good and evil, light and dark. When you wonder about beyond that, one option is emptiness, complete emptiness, which I personally feel the Buddhist path took that approach. They were like, hey guys, it's empty. Oh, okay, so we're all enlightened, because there's nothing here being everything. So it's as if, like, what is suffering is nothing. So there's no fear, at least I would say, through the Buddhic path. So one approach is emptiness. The materialist approach also goes that way. So I would say, this is why I think, quantum physicists rather talk to Buddhists than, like, religious priests or something. But so anyways, the void is one approach. Another approach is the singular, and this is where I would say religion has capitalized on this. It's as if the person's like, in this world of good and evil, where is the justice? And the justice is God. And what is God? The singular source. God is like the small opening in the darkness of the world that is, like, started everything. Do you know? It's another way of saying it's like the inner sun. S-U-N, inner sun. The notion of God, it's like the source of everything. That means if you're a person raised in a religious environment and you see, like, somebody do a backflip, I saw this in Iran, like, this guy did a backflip, and then there were these, like, grocery store owners outside their shop, and they were like, mashallah, and that means, like, look, like, it's another way of saying, look at what God's doing. Everything is seen through a singular path. So that's another approach to go. And then another approach would be to wonder about the unknown and the infinite. The unknown is not a valuation. That means when somebody says truth is unknown, that means no ideological stamp can touch this. It is, I find it to be the supreme realization of the species. I feel all ideological systems, let's say there are institutions out there, and there's these institutions have many followers, right? And the followers are like, okay, tell us, where does our truths, where does our truth go? You know, and they all go to the unknown, because the unknown is the most humblest state. It is the, I would say, original state where man recognizes that when unknown dimensions activate, potential, instant potentials to animate the mind occur. Do you know? It's as if sometimes it does make sense materialistically to be certain before you do certain things. You know, let's say before you do a backflip, you got to be certain of like your ability, right? But when it comes to the nature of your mind, and as I'm trying to build up to this notion of the secret of symmetrical dimensions, when it comes to the mind, the mind can instantly shift through the attention. You can instantly activate yourself based on what you see, you know? It's kind of hilarious. It's as if reality is light and our minds are mirrors. But there are mirrors where when the light enters our eyes and the brain starts wielding this light beam, do you know? It reflects off the mirror of the mind into a subjective realm. And you know, aside from just being, with the world being void, just being singular, just being dualistic, just being infinite, it could be just like those multiple choice, you know, questions, like all of the above. You know, it's like there could be variations of it even. There's so many ways to fathom reality. Now, what I discovered recently, or to me, which I pointed to at the beginning, that it's like such a huge implication, is that I suddenly thought about, okay, let's say let's entertain this notion that there's other dimensions. Let's for a second entertain the transcendental perspective. This transcendental perspective has been caught between chaos and order, but instead of us seeing chaos and order, what if we see the notion of symmetry? Like, there's a great clue, right? It's as if there's a symmetry to the human biology, right? The planet appearing as a sphere, there's a symmetry there. Symmetry is everywhere, do you know? And then I thought, okay, could it be a symmetrical dimension? Could it be that right now I am, in some sense, living an individual life in this fashion, and it's like the reverse is simultaneously taking place? It's as if us thinking that the human being is in one dimension, rather it's like, what if we perceived it that it was in two symmetrical dimensions? And here I've written two rhythms. Now, this is my finding. This is pretty much like why I started this episode, I would say. The secret I feel I have somehow revealed, and I don't know how these words I'm going to say are going to echo on into the future, but it's this notion that the body is in a dimension where it's going from the past to the future, and when there's the concept of like Jungian synchronicities, you know, intuitive guidance, Socrates talked about this inner oracle notion, right? The concept of destiny and religion, it's like the concept of, you know, God's plan and all of this. So it's as if our body, the material dimension, is like has a relationship with intelligence going from past to the future. The mind could be going from the future to the past. Instant symmetry. That means it has never been us just going from past to the future. Future has been walking to the past simultaneously in a symmetrical reality where the dimensions are symmetrical. And then I thought about this notion in Abrahamic traditions where they talk about the resurrection. So I don't know if many people know this, but like, I mean, billions of people know this, but but what I want to say in certain, if you ask a religious person from the Abrahamic traditions, okay, what happens after death? It's as if they are resurrected by the divine, and then they go through a process of judgment. And I thought, what if you imagine like just like a 90 degrees, where you start from the two sides, let's say the corner of a room, cubic room, and it's as if from the corners, both corners are like, it's like you're going to one corner. It's as if two lines connecting, right? And their intersection is like the moment where the human being dies, the symmetrical life lives. Do you know? This notion of symmetry is huge, and it's been everywhere. Do you know? I'm telling you, nature has some symmetrical. It's like one of the biggest clues about existence. Now, this clue can be perceived, like parallels of it can be perceived in regards to the notion of metaphysics and dimensions. It could be that in lesser dimensions, reality is like how would I say this? It's like what we think is like, at least in the Buddhist or yogic perspective, is like a transmigratory soul endlessly reincarnating through matter, or like as Rumi saw, an evolution of the soil from the mineral to the inconceivable. It could be just force reflecting off some sort of mirror. When I say mirror, as if like on a cosmic scale. So I feel that if we consider symmetrical dimensions, our mind is coming from the future to the past, and when I say mind, I'm actually suggesting to the transcendental dimension of human life. Okay. So what I'm saying is, like, imagine this: in a known universe, realities or a life is being lived going from the past to the future, you know. And that's in a known universe, and in an unknown universe that's symmetrically connected to this universe, it's as if you're going from the future to the past. And here's the kicker. I'll say this: if in our dream states we actually are there, it explains the capabilities of imagination, right? I have sometimes thought that, of course, like, we have this view as a species, history repeats itself, the past is endlessly, like, looping. But it could be that some events of the human mind that are unexplainable is because somewhere in the intelligence of the being, presence is living a life that started from the timeless. Right now our life is based on, like, we're something in some space, and as we change in the space, we've created the concept of time to pinpoint ourselves in just like empty space. And here's the hilarious thing: we need the concept of emptiness to have the concept of space. That means the idea of emptiness is more ancient than space. It's hilarious. It's like this whole time the species has been just staring at a coin that's flipping, like mid-air. History is like this coin that never lands on heads or tails, you know? It's still just spinning. So, my explanation of the mind and divinity is that it's just an awareness of how the future is going to the past the moment there's an individuality, at the same time as the past is going to the future. And it could be, I've talked about this in other talks. I remember there was a talk, I called it Ghost of Civilizations Past. It could be that in the future we are a collective being. So how the future communicates to the past is that the individual knows everything. And then how the past communicates with the future, the individual doesn't know anything. I've written here in quotations, it's a world of symmetrical dimensions. And earlier I pointed to this idea of debunking good and evil. Really, it's just realizing you're noticing both of them simultaneously in order to see the existence of one of them. That means here's the strange thing. My life is based on, death. And my death is based on life. It's as if we weren't alive, there would be no concept of death. If we were dead, there would be no concept of life. It's as if they require one another. That means death is connected to life. So that means death is never death, and life is never life, Because what are the options of just like a bunch of creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere? Like, what can we do? We can either be like, all right, energetic, and it's like we find salvation in our sense of being in a singular way, or we just infinitely manage chaos, like duality. I don't know, like what else can the species do? Sometimes I think about like the great human endeavor, And it's as if like, okay, let's say human species survived, it's like, what's it gonna do? Just this may be a bit like, something unnecessary to say, but it's like, is the species just gonna have, sex all over the universe and galaxies, like endless human beings repopulating this massive space? Or is there like a performance notion where the species is here to dance its dance, and then the eyes remember the beyond? Okay, guys, let me put on my glasses. There's some comments. Okay, Lemon Lime says in the chat section, how is the idea of emptiness more ancient than space if one needs the other to exist? No. Space and emptiness are more synonymous. There's more like an equal sign, between them. So that means it's as if it's like, how do you define space? The absence of form, right? So it's as if like without the idea of emptiness, how can you define space? So there would be no. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you need the notion of somewhere for something to be, and that somewhere is the absence. That's the way we relate to it, at least. Lemon Lime says, is there a difference between symmetrical and geometrical? I would say, first of all, I would say I have a unique perspective. To me, for example, people see geometry as part of mathematics. I see geometry as its own branch. That means it can, like there is a mathematics is like a branch of geometry, you know. You know, but I would say the difference between symmetrical and geometrical, geometrical means outline, means form, shape, do you know? So symmetry, like, and if that if you can think of symmetry as a way, uh, as an interpretation of geometry, you know. But the whole point of it is that it's simultaneously having a reverse life, you know. It's like, I don't know if people have done this, but sometimes when I've like achieved something, that means to myself I felt it was great, like I high-five the mirror. And trust me, like when you look at that symmetry, it's like in another angle the same, you know, or but because it's another angle, it's never the same. So it's strange, you know. It's as if like, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder about like, where does the mind get its instructions for behavior? Or I shouldn't even say instructions. Where, how does intelligence know how to instantly know? And we have only used a way of thinking about this only from the past to the future. It's like this attitude of like the past defining the future. It's like too much, you know, because it's not allowing unknown angles to be there. Do you know? Because it's constantly being filtered through what we've done, right? But this is where art has a huge role in civilization, where you can say art is like a revelation localized, you know. Not I wouldn't say religious revelation, but novelty. You know, it's like a revelation of the new. Because you look at the human being, what we're creatures that we get bored. Do you know? Like we get bored of, if there isn't unknown variables expanding, like, you know, the horizons of our how we see things happen. But to me, I don't know. I felt it was really profound that it's as if like there is a life as a collective being experiencing an individual, and an individual experiencing a collective being. You know, we're on this side of the coin. You know. But this idea of transcending collective fear, like it's a long way. There is a practical way to it, right? It's as if right now the species is fighting over its like individual differences. Do you know? We're fighting over color. Like that's the stupidest thing to me. Do you know? Because color is a universal. You know, in philosophy, like you look at the color and you're like, it's as if we're, how can I tell you? It's like a part of life. You know, we're fighting over individual truths, or I should say, individuals' truths of the collective. But I don't know. I mean, like an advanced civilization wouldn't be afraid of, just like how we're not afraid of being individuals, like people live as human beings. We shouldn't like this. We should get to that same level of like, you know, comfort of living as a collective without fear. You know, right now, I honestly think this, for this plane of existence, for this, for this earth, it's literally technological salvation, because we are so physical focused, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just like it's as if we need to feed a starving world, then open its mind. You know, so the feeding part of the starving world is going to be technological innovation. Most likely, that's going to be a sort of salvation, and then to open up the mind of 8 billion human beings, there has to be collective events taking place. Now, in my own school of thought, I use the term like advanced communicator, and then advanced communicators, and then pilots of consciousness, you know. And to me, the advanced communicators are there to navigate in the outer realms, to advance the outer realms. But for the pilots, these are human beings that are steering collective events. Because what does a pilot do? You know, there's a bunch of passengers and it's like flying in space, you know, in the sky. You know, right now, if there's like, you know, there's 6 people listening in this moment, it's as if like I'm a pilot of 6 people's attention, you know, in this live stream. But when collective events come, those collective events would also like pilot our attention. Everything in life, the moment you see beyond objects, you're considering dynamism. And in dynamism, that's where free will comes, right? That means there's no free will if reality was like a photograph, never changing. It's in change where there's opportunities to decide. You know something I didn't write down, but the thought occurred to me. I thought that there's definitely going to be a celestial renaissance. I don't know if I think it may start like, you know, I don't know when it will happen, but there will come a time where we will get bored of like past historic events and defining the meaning of things, right? And opening up to a celestial level of symbolism. That means it's as if like imagining if advanced, you know, extraterrestrial life forms, a peaceful, advanced extraterrestrial life forms landed on Earth, and there was like, imagine, oh my God, imagine instead of one extraterrestrial life form landing on Earth, like, I don't know, 10 advanced, you know, let's say enlightened extraterrestrial life forms land on Earth at the same time. And then it's as if all those 10 archetypes that have entered, let's say, the collective species, the mind of the collective species, each, you know what it is? I'm the words to what I feel right now, if I could, I would say it's like in our inner realms, events can happen that have not yet happened in the outer realms. That's the whole point of imagination, all the inventors in reality. But I'm saying we can also, the mind can also fathom post things that haven't happened yet in the outer realms, again through the inner realms. So it's kind of like I'm saying, if we were to act as if advanced extraterrestrial life forms were already living on Earth, and the most advanced AI and technology was also here on Earth, and then the most advanced human levels of intelligence were here on Earth, it's like, what would that look like? Do you know, how would the behavior be? Right? It's as if the outer realms just gives us one reference of how life is happening, but it's in the inner realms so many variations can come, and the ability to discriminate between these suggests how good of a pilot you are, how advanced of a, if you were a mystic, how advanced of a, you know, let's say soul you are here. That advancement is just based on the ability, the discrimination of your perception, you know, and the ways that it's happening. The mind is so fascinating that, just think about it, when we sleep, in our dreams, it's creating a body and world of engagement. It's as if the mind is, it's like we are living 2 lives. You know, this is so, as the modern poets would say, faux show. You know? And here's the strange thing. I think that, first of all, the species currently in 2022 is on a path of technological dehumanization. That means the way we're living is that we're going to get exposed to certain technological freedoms in the future, and these technological freedoms are going to make the animal instincts seek something beyond the natural. Now, imagine it successfully found, that which was beyond the natural, and then it forgets the natural. So that would be a huge collective fear for the species. And in order to transcend that, the only way is that to create backup systems in the artificial worlds that will come, that will revert at least a percentage of, let's say, those. I'll give you an example here. Imagine, like, right now I'm giving these talks, and these talks are on the internet. Now imagine something happens in the future where everybody's like, yo, it's too boring to live in the outer realms. Too boring to live, naturally as a human being. I'm just gonna go connect my brain to this cyberspace and then live like a god, live like, whatever I want, right? It's as if, and imagine people are lost in cyberspace, and then they suddenly come across like this YouTube channel where someone's talking about the time where trees were still, where it's as if people still climb trees. Like, honestly, our great grandchildren in the future are going to be like, people climb trees? Like, they're not going to know how to climb trees, and it's going to oh, man. It's like a time traveler went to see their, great 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 grandson, and there was a tree, they saw, let's say, their great grandson in a park in the future, and they were like, let's climb a tree and see the view from there, and then the great grandson's like, you can climb trees? Oh my god. I don't know. I'm trying to. I feel there's a natural mystery that actually can't ever be forgotten. Something in life seeks freedom, some force. And if we, from a materialistic perspective, in the past we're not free, let's say, and in the future we want freedom. So the future is where the notion of freedom is. So from the mind walking from the future to the past, it's as if like it's as if our minds at their core are free and our bodies are not. And because the mind identifies, or let me say, like, the theists and atheists listening are going to be like, Mr. Within, pick a side. And I'll say, it's really the third side would be just like, the soul, the mind's relationship with the unknown witness, let's call it soul, is free. It's already free, but the body is not free. So when matter has a relationship with, like, let's say, the transcendental witness, it's literally like staring at something that will break one day, But when the mind looks at it, it's as if, what's this whole thing about past lives? As if the mind echoes from life to life. As if the mind doesn't die, the body does. But the body's required to know you have a mind. Pretty much there's something looking out through our eyes, you know. And it's more than just, a system or a structure. It's like a force that has a freedom of effort already. Instantaneously, it has a freedom of effort. And all our fears for now are connected to the human archetype, right? To the human body. That means if we didn't have bodies, let's say it was like some field of intelligence, it's like, what would be fear? It's like if you were the ocean, you would have no fear of the ocean, but if you're on a boat that's sinking in the ocean, then you have a fear of the ocean, for example. So when we become the ocean, we've transcended the collective fear. But as long as we're in the ocean, as long as we're the small and the big, there's fear. When you're the big and the small, it's as if it's only joy. It's like the religious man saw existence as God's artwork. And the non-religious man saw it as God's accident, the secular man. And then the mystic was like, what is here never was. When you, just like the Srimad Bhagavatam says, when you stop identifying with the fruits of karma, then it's like you don't have karma. Which is another way of saying once you have transitioned beyond, the outcome of the human being, just like an artist is not afraid of its artwork, truth is not afraid of its illusions. Anyways. I'm going to open this Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And so there's 5 viewers, 3 likes, and 0 new members, 530. I'll open the page 5. So this is, again, just to give people the context in this book I'm going to read, ancient book I'm going to read. God is talking to this archer, like revealing the truth of reality to this archer. So page 530 says, my external material energy has 8 divisions: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. O Mahabaho, you should know that my external energy, which consists of 8 divisions, is inferior. There is another potency of mine known as the Jiva Sarupa, which is superior and which accepts this material world for the purpose of enjoying the fruits of karma. Know that all created beings have been born from these 2 Prakritis. I alone am the sole cause of the creation and destruction of the entire universe. Oh my god, I don't know if I can pronounce this. O Dhananjaya, There's nothing superior to me. This whole universe is dependent on me, like jewels strung on a thread. And finally it says, O Kanteya, I am the taste in water, the radiance of the moon and sun, and the syllable Om in all Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and the ability in man. Yeah, guys, pretty much God is just like imagine like a novelist writes a novel, creates a character in a novel, and then, the character somehow doesn't listen, and then the novelist goes and talks to the character, It's like a relationship of a mind. I would say this book is another way of, it's like a fractal of, the best thing I could say is how Meister Eckhart, this Christian mystic from 1,000 years ago, he said, like, the same eyes I see God are the same eyes God sees me. Which is another suggestion to, you can say, the whole symmetrical thing. Symmetrical dimensions. Sometimes I wonder if there are ways of being a natural being that we have not discovered yet. That means how many different ways could there be of like using your attention as an intelligent being and then suddenly activating so many things that we don't know, Imagine just like an object, you can place that object in so many different settings. It's like, how many ways could the attention of being a human being in the moment be set where there's so many different abilities or rhythms accessed? And consciousness translates sight into just extended life, extended subjective life. I would say this is the last statement. The eyes within are the gatekeepers to the freedom that the outer realms seek. That means something that maybe nobody can ever teach. Or let me say it this way, you can learn from what is in front of your eyes, and then you can also learn by being what is looking through your eyes. And when the presence of the being activates, the fear of the personality goes away. Your presence is how your relationship as energy with reality. Your personality is your relationship as an idea with reality. And your body as a subject with reality, and your body is your relationship with an object. And if the fear is a subjective interpretation of what is happening in the object, the moment your attention goes beyond objects or subjects so you can witness them simultaneously, or how Rumi says chaos and order are like wings of a bird and it needs both wings to fly, so similarly your presence is aware of the body and mind, simultaneously flapping. It's as if we're in flight. We're in existential and experiential flight. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.